Hi, hello. Welcome to another episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is May 7th, 2022. How are you? My week's pretty good. A lot of work. I got back on the DoorDash saddle, more or less, or like food delivery, if you will, whatever. So I was dashing the week away and also doing my main job, so that was fun. Oh, there we go. Hold on, burps. Whew. Okay, there we go. There we go. I started my morning off with a bunch of candy. I don't know why I'm like this at 31, but whatever. But yeah, no, week was good. Let's see. What do I have to tell you about my week? Food corner. I got some papusas. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. There's this place up the street from me that apparently opened recently, like a Mexican little restaurant, Papuseria. I think I'm saying it right. Yeah, I think we're killing it. So it was really good. I got a couple. I got one that was chicken and cheese, and the other one was pork and cheese. So they were like nice and big, and I got all the little fixins I guess that can come with it, and that was nice. So yes, yummy, yummy, yummy. And then also movie corner. I also saw Doctor Strange. I was on it this week. So that was fun. That was cool. I definitely would recommend it. I'm obviously not going to spoil it, but it was cool to see Marvel hit a level of horror, quote unquote, that is still a Marvel movie that kids are gonna see. So it was a nice balance, and for me, I'm anti spooky boy. Like I'm not into it. Like I try sometimes, but I think the goriest thing, spookiest thing I saw was like Saw. I saw up to like Saw 5. I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't know. There's most of the classics I haven't seen. So, but still, Sam Raimi is legendary. Evil Dead, legendary. So cool to see him on the direction. I think that definitely kind of helped the movie in a lot of ways. And I'm sure people are going to be like critical, which I think is always weird. Like people being critical of superhero movies. I don't know. It's kind of extra. Like you know what's going to happen. It's like an action. It's like being critical of an action movie. Like it's just kind of like why are you doing that? Unless they completely whiff, then I understand talking about it. But yeah, that's about it for me. We can get into some news. Very interesting news week if you ask me. I mean, not that they aren't all, but I don't know. I felt like I was kind of turning and seeing everything was popping up. I'm like, wow. I was really Owen Wilson. This is a little bit of an kind of leftovers from last week, but it's kind of gone into this week. But got this from BBC. Mariupol civilians leave besieged Azovstal steelworks. Essentially, I guess this is like 6 days ago, so it's still in the purview. At least the article. But there was like a UN kind of helped negotiate a corridor, a humanitarian corridor. And they got out a good amount of people. Oh gosh, excuse me. But not everyone was able to leave. Also, I believe a lot of the soldiers are going to be staying because it requires a surrender. And I believe there was like a quote from one of the men who are there. They're like, yeah, no, we're not going to lay down our arms. It's just not going to happen. If the political powers that be are able to make a negotiation that works, cool. But like, we see that that's probably not going to be the case. I mean, they've been besieged and then they've had people in this steelworks for over, I think, like 2 months at this point. So it's pretty wild. But after that corridor kind of shut, Russia immediately went back to like the bombardments and things of that nature. It's also believed that they are like actually doing more breaching now. So, I'll keep you posted on that, but that's still kind of ongoing. But outside of the actual war, there's been like some Russia news and some blowouts for some stuff. But we can get into a news story I picked up from New York Post. Putin to undergo cancer surgery, transfer power to ex-FSB chief, report. So, essentially what I gathered from this article is that, like, nothing is really like set in stone. Like the Kremlin has not like come out and actually said anything. They probably won't. So this is like kind of just like information gathering and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, from what has been gathered, Putin is going to be going through cancer surgery. Like I said, I thought it might be this week, but like I said, there's no word on that. Plus, it might be after the whole Victory Day thing, which I think is in a couple days, I think on the 9th. So he's going to be handing over power to Nikolai Patrushev. So, essentially, I'm sure some people are curious, like, is there going to be some kind of coup action or things like that? I feel like that's highly unlikely. Something would have to really go bad in the surgery or something like that. I guess you could only hope. But even so, apparently from, what's kind of put up in this article, that Pushchev, I'm going to keep saying it until I hear it. But apparently he's like as bad or worse. So it's not like it would be a better situation if this guy wasn't, if this guy was in power. And that's typically kind of how these things go when you have like a dictator type thing. The people who rise to the top are the most like that person, or potentially worse. You know what I mean? And these people have climbed the ranks for a reason and gotten to their position for a reason. So, we'll see how that goes. Also, to kind of close out our little Ukraine-Russia part, also got this from the BBC News. Putin sorry for Lavrov's claim Hitler was part Jewish. So this kind of dropped in the beginning of the week. I heard the apology about it, I think, on Wednesday. Now, Putin and the Kremlin haven't come out and said they actually apologized per se, but they had a conversation with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett to smooth over this situation that happened. What happened was Mr. Lavrov spoke to Italian TV on Sunday, and this was after the Israel Holocaust Remembrance Day. So, it's a big deal, but Lavrov was asked about the claim of denazifying Ukraine while there is, a Jewish president. And Lavrov's response was, I could be wrong, but Hitler also had Jewish blood. And then it's in brackets, that Zelensky is Jewish means absolutely nothing. Wise Jewish people say that the most ardent anti-Semites are usually Jews. So that's a big statement to say. And I think you could tell Lavrov immediately kind of opened his mouth and kind of knew he was about to say some dumb shit. But he just kind of said, I'm just going to say it. It's going to pop off. So he says it. And this is just one of those things where it immediately caused backlash. Because this is like a known like neo-Nazi kind of tactic to kind of wash over what happened and really say like, oh, okay, well, there's this like alleged rumor that like, I guess Hitler's grandma, you don't know exactly what her full ancestry was, so yada yada yada, she's Jewish, and that kind of, I guess, bred a certain conspiracy theory type thinking, a rumor, and people will lean on that and they will say it just like haphazardly to be like, oh yeah, whatever. And I think sometimes people say it to like make fun of Hitler because of his whole Anglo like perfect race thing, and it's like, well, isn't it ironic? And it's like, but that doesn't do, it's not the own that you think it is in the conversation, because like I said, Nazi type thinking will kind of just use it as like a playback to be like, see, this wasn't as bad as people make it seem. It was just Jewish on Jewish violence. And like, whoa, dude, no, like that's a terrible way of thinking, and it doesn't work. It's wrong. So Putin, called Bennett, I guess. They had a little chit chat. They worked it out. They smoothed it out. But I was like, wow, that is crazy. Didn't expect to hear that on the airwaves when I was listening to the BBC podcast. So I wanted to talk about that. Some national news that are happening in the good old US of A. And I think this is kind of like the halfway mark. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it early, if you know what I mean. So Politico got a big news drop, if you ask me. Real juicy, big news. And I'll just go ahead and read the title. Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights. Draft opinion shows. I'll read a little quote header under here. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. Justice Alito writes in an initial majority draft calculated inside the court. So apparently there was a leak to Politico that was this 98-page draft. And I'm learning a lot about the Supreme Court as I do this podcast. I'm learning a lot about just everything. I pick it up. Cool. I try to tell you guys about it. Essentially, they came together, and this is also like a big abortion case that has happened. I think it started from last year, or they had heard testimony from it last year from Mississippi, this big Mississippi abortion case, about the timing of when are abortions legal or illegal. With Roe v. Wade, it's 23 weeks, or the viability of the fetus. So that's been a concrete thing. It's been set in stone. That's a decision. It's been like a quote unquote super precedent. I'm still not saying it right. But, this draft that was written, it was more or less the consensus thought from, I believe, the 6 Republicans, more or less, saying like, hey, we're all cool with throwing this whole thing out. It's crazy. Alito uses the words egregiously wrong. Yeah, he says, quote unquote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Whew, giving it to ya. But essentially, this is supposed to be just like this group thought from among these people saying like, hey, we're done with it. We're pretty much going to strike it down the next time that, we're going to rule out our series of rulings. This is what it's going to show, and we're going to more or less have this consensus thought. Now, granted, this isn't a concrete draft. Like, this isn't like actual gospel until they actually come out and do it. But this is a big leak because it's letting everyone know now that is on the menu for this year. Also, it's not something that we've really talked about too much, but we have been talking about abortion. You can kind of see that there's been a ramp up. More laws are getting pushed and passed and signed. It's really frustrating to see, and it's also frustrating because I know I live in a state that is, anti-abortion. I think that's very fucked up. I think that deprives a woman of their right. I think it's crazy that a situation where a majority of men who are controlling the wheel are saying, hey, you as a woman, you shouldn't just be able to do this thing. We think that the little baby parts that you have in you that are eventually going to become a human being, they should have a chance. That's they deserve a shot. Even though this creates more problems than actual solutions. So I don't know. I find that this kind of subject is really hard for me to get everything out on how I feel, because it's a lot. And and it's like, well, what do you mean you don't have any stake in it? And it's like, true, I don't. But as a person who was like adopted, I was in a situation where like I got a chance. I have a relationship with my biological mother, so we've talked. And at the time I was 16 when we had this conversation, and she goes, Isaiah, like, I was too young when I had you. I was not prepared. And everyone knew that was going to happen. And a solution that they told me was like, you can just get an abortion. Why not just do that? Like, you have your whole life ahead of you. Why not just do that? And, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have you. I thought that was the right thing to do. That was my decision to do. And I remember going like, wow, that's crazy. And I was really Christian at the time too. So I'm thinking like in that kind of mindset, in that POV, I'm very pro-life in that state of mind. And I'm like, yeah, wow, it's crazy how that all worked out. Like, God really moved and I'm here, blah, 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 blah. Fast forward though, for real, my thoughts on it now, like, especially I kind of came to this conclusion in my like early mid 20s. I didn't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just a bundle of things. I did not have coherent thought, and this is with my personal living experience. I didn't have coherent thoughts until I was like 4 years old. Nothing mattered. Nothing mattered to me. And honestly, not much shit matters to me now. If I didn't have the life I had, I would not care. I wouldn't have known about it. I wouldn't have existed. Just as much as the cool, great things that have happened to me, the bad things wouldn't have happened to me as well. I find that these conversations, either side of the coin, are very anecdotal and they don't really matter. But I do feel like what really does matter is, one, the science, that at the end of the day, life at conception is crazy because We're still running the sim to get this thing to reality, to get it to actual product. It's like saying, like, you have a flashlight before the flashlight is even built. Like, it has to go through the whole process of being assembled, and then it's a flashlight. So these parts aren't a baby. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and it's crazy to have these kind of conversations and arguments with people. I try to keep it to a minimum, but I do like to kind of just pop it off in the podcast because I do feel a way about these things. I think it's crazy that people, because they have a religious background, feel a need to enact this kind of control for babies they'll never see or know, and don't matter to them really. But it's just it's such a spooky thought, and also it's a floodgate thing. And I think both sides do realize that from what I've been kind of listening to, is they kind of see like the work's not done just because Roe v. Wade gets turned over. Like, if anything, now it becomes individual, state to state, they're fighting. There are, I don't know if I said that before I got into my long-winded rant, but there are like 13 states that are going to, they have trigger laws. So essentially, the second that Roe v. Wade is turned over, they're going to trigger and ban abortions. I believe, like I said, Ohio is one of those states. I've even heard, I think a senator from Loveland is like, yeah, and if you get raped, that's just an opportunity to have the baby. Why would you take away the life of the baby? Like, it's crazy. It's wild. So, I mean, these are going to be no holds barred. There was a situation that happened in Texas. I didn't get a chance to cover it. I kind of let it get lost in shuffle. But a woman who had an abortion, more or less, it was an induced miscarriage. I think, it was found out about it, I guess, from the hospital or whatever. They decided to charge her. But once it actually got news coverage, they backed down and dropped the charges. So, I mean, you can tell that these are people testing the waters. They want to make abortion not just, like, outlawed. They want to make it illegal. They want to criminally charge people. They want to criminalize it. And I think that's draconian as hell. I think that's wrong. I also think, once again, we're still at these floodgates. They are just going to go back. Now, Alito, in his little draft, he does try to say that, hey, what I am talking about here, I'm saying in specific regards to just this Roe v. Wade thing and just about abortion. I do not mean that about, like, gay rights and things like that, because Roe v. Wade has been a precedent for about 50 years. Now, there are things like legalizing gay marriage that have been around for even less. And if these conservatives are going to keep pushing their narrative, they're just most likely going to say that that is also a wrong thing, that this is also egregiously wrong. And they're just going to try to backturn that. And I think that's fucked up. And I think they're just going to keep coming around and around and around and keep covering their issues. Like, they're going to be anti-trans rights. And I'm also going to say, too, they're going to be anti-minorities. Let's just be fucking real about it. They're going to keep pushing these things. And then what? They're going to give you guns? And you're going to be, quote-unquote, happy about it. I think that's just really fucking wild. It really upsets me. It gets my fucking goat. Also, a follow-up to that, just like initial more kind of cause and effect shit. I got this from Yahoo News. This kind of dropped in my lap. Let's see. It says the 5th. I just found out about it recently, though. I think like yesterday. But Louisiana lawmakers advance a bill that would classify abortion as homicide. So this is, well, again, this is the criminalization shit. But in this, they go it a step further, and they bring up the whole idea of, like, if you're even stopping the fertilization of an egg, that's a criminal act. So they're really trying to come for contraception here. So like in vitro fertilization, that's going to be an issue. Also the use of potentially like using an IUD, that's a fucking issue. I'm like, are you kidding me? They're like, well, we'll cross those bridges when we get there, but they want to get this law through. And I'm like, you're going to be sending people to actual fucking court trials and potentially having them fined or going to jail for their right to choose something. Like, in my mind, you're just pushing people out of your state. I think that's fucking wild. But I also then realized, too, that this is attracting people. I so quickly have forgotten the whole pro-life stance and agenda, how it is really a campaign. Just because for me, I've always looked at it, no matter what my religion was, my views, that people are people and you should treat them as such. And as a man, I have full autonomy to do what I want with my body. Like, as long as what I'm doing isn't hurting someone outside of myself, I'm allowed to do it. Like, I'm totally okay within my regard, unless we're talking like actually, jumping off a building for myself. Like, I guess that's illegal. But what are they gonna do when I'm dead, right? They can't feed me. Once again, so I have full autonomy, top to bottom. When we're talking about a person's rights as a woman, they should have the same degree. They should have the same control. And once again, when you're talking about that little soul inside of you, it's not out yet. It's not there yet. Until and this is me. Like, I honestly, like, I think that Roe v. Wade is just enough. It's a concession. It is a handshake so that we can agree on this both sides of the aisle. And my personal opinion is it's like the Oregon Trail. You did not make it through the game until you got to Oregon, my dude. You got to get out. You got to get through. If you get dysentery along the way, then you did not make it. You're not an Oregoner, man. Like, I'm sorry. So for me, like, terms and all that, yada, 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 you especially with the third term shit, like, I know it's like, oh, Isaiah, you're being wild, you're being crazy, but there are times where medically you can't have the child, and it sucks, and it's terrible, and it's hell, but a parent has to make that decision. Like a mom or a woman, whatever you want to call her, she has to make that decision, and that's hard enough as it is. Imagine then having to face criminal charges because you had this miscarriage that you had to do. You know what I mean? It just shouldn't have to be a fight. It's a choice. It should just be a choice. So I know I've gone real long on this shit. Once again, I don't want my computer to die on me. I got to keep these short and crispy. So I'll wrap up with our page 6. The Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial. I don't want to say there was too much updates, but the more I kind of think about it over the week, it was big. Amber Heard, finally got a chance to speak. Now, granted, this is kind of like the part 1 of it. And there's going to be a week break. I think they come back. The trial resumes May 13th. But essentially, this week was just the psychiatrist talking. And this was Amber Heard's personal psychiatrist, I believe. And then Amber Heard. So it was a lot. Amber Heard really kind of went through her accounting of things. And it details the abuse in a much darker light for Johnny Depp. And, I mean, it's one of those things where I think in the court of public opinion, she's still taking an L, if you will. Just still taking the loss. It does feel like a very rehearsed, coached thing. Though I will say both sides are definitely coached. There's no doubt about that. But, like, just in the way that she describes it, and this is just my POV, is it really does feel like she can remember all the gruesome details and things. Like, she goes into, in one story, it's really highlighted in a Yahoo News article, but that Johnny Depp penetrated her with the liquor bottle. And I think this is her recounting of a situation where he gets his hand cut by Amber Heard, according to him. So it's just a very back and forth situation. But from her, she's describing it like, oh, I didn't like cut a bottle on his hand. No, he like raped me with a bottle, then goes on this crazy rage tangent. I go to bed, I wake up, and then here's all this bedlam, and he's cut his hand, all this stuff. There's a lot of retelling of things that are just very different. She doesn't really describe any of her physical violence, even though it is recorded in text messages, and, I think, like, in other testimonies from other people, she just recounts it very differently. She only recalls the time that she punches Johnny because there's a situation where Johnny is going to go for, I believe, Kate Moss or something. I think it's not Kate Moss. I'm not quite sure. But, like, she goes for, like, her sister as a sibling. And she's like, no, I wasn't going to let that happen, so I punched him. And he didn't go for her. I think she was recalling that Kate Moss fell down some stairs. That's what it was. I'm sorry. I got twisted up there. But it was her sister who that Johnny was going for, according to her. And she's like, I stopped that. I punched him. She recalls the headbutt. Like, he headbutted her. Not so much in which Johnny said. I was, like, defending myself, holding her, detaining her, and we headbutted. Like, we kind of, like, locked heads potentially. So, I mean, it's a messy case. The big source I got for info was definitely from the NBC News. Definitely just kind of gives you a good, like, blow-by-blow as well. But I mean, man, it is one of those things where I still feel like Johnny's winning in the court of public opinion, but it definitely remains to be seen how it's going to go in terms of an actual verdict. In America, it's very hard to prove defamation. He tried this in the UK and it didn't work then. So most likely he's not getting the 50 mil. Most likely Amber Heard's not getting the 100 mil. But I mean, there is a chance that like after this, now that quote unquote the whole story's out there and people can kind of really say for themselves, um, you know, maybe Johnny Depp can get some more work or something. I don't know. I personally, I really don't care. I'm kind of cool on Depp movies. I mean, they're fine. I mean, I still would watch Pirates of the Caribbean, at least like 1 to 3, right? I don't know how many there are now, but yeah, I mean, that'd be dope. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a Pineapple Express fan, so yeah, I do fuck with Amber Heard. I'm just gonna full disclosure. I don't really care about their actual real lives in terms of like, oh, who am I standing for? Because I think they're all doing their own thing, and that's none of my business. I'm staying out of rich people's business, at least in that regard. But that wraps it up. That's pretty much all I got. I will have another episode where you know we're gonna talk about some more stuff. I got a Patreon. That's patreon.com/Isaiah News. You should check it out. Any dollar subscription amount, like that helps a lot. But $5 will get you Discord access, get you a shout out on the podcast. I say your name, all that good stuff. You can also reach me at isaiahnews1@gmail.com. And that's all I got. Hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. Thanks for stopping by. Love ya. Mwah.